You've learned so much, you've accomplished so much. What do you think's the thing that's holding you back from your next level of your genius, of your greatness?
I've got a great family life. I've got a great partner. I've got wonderful children. My parents are in their 80s. My dad was a family physician for 54 years. He's retired. They're healthy, thank God. I get to do work I love. I'm not this financial titan, but I love my craft. I love serving. I get to live in the places that I want to live. I live a relatively simple life. So I'm in a good place. I just want to, I don't know if there's a lot of blocks. I just want to keep on writing. After I finished the Everyday Hero Manifesto, I thought it was my last book. But I think right now I want to...
Now you got 5 more in your mind? Yeah.
Now I got 47 more in my mind.
When do you doubt yourself the most?
When I'm tired. When I'm tired, I think it's probably the cortisol pulsing through my system. I doubt myself. When I'm in a season in my life where I'm meant to have not productive growth but spiritual growth, I start to doubt myself.
When you're pushing more in something as opposed to spiritually growing, you mean?
Well, I actually believe we have a higher power. And a higher power isn't necessarily God or spirit or the universe as people call it. I believe we have our wounded self. Well, like we get knocked around in life, so we forget who we are. So we've got our wounded self, call it our egoic self, and we've got our heroic self. And to me, that's our higher power. And every single person on the planet today has a higher self. This is the part of us that actually knows the answers to our deepest questions. This is the part of us that knows we need to be good. It's the part of ourself that instinct is so much more powerful than intellect. So it's the part of us that is the instinct, the silent whispers of, here's what you should be doing. We have this higher power is the part of us that's unbreakable, even if physically we're broken. It was Albert Camus who said, in the midst of winter, I discovered within me an invincible summer. We have this. When we do the work to move through the layers and start to reclaim ourselves, does it happen in a day? No, but day by day by day, we get closer and closer and closer. We connect with this higher power. And I believe this higher power, when we let go of control, and we just say, okay, I'm going to be led by this instinct, or to be tactical, follow your joy. But I found in my life there are just seasons. It could be 2 years, it could be 5 months, where I am meant to be writing books and recording courses and doing social media posts and like getting up at 4:15 in the morning and working out with trainers. And I trust that lead.
Yes.
And then almost naturally, natively, and I think I've got better at this, there's a time where I'm supposed to sunbathe more. There's a time when I'm not supposed to work. I don't have any ideas. I'm more, and I just trust that that's a season where I'm not supposed to be producing. And then there's times where I just feel frustrated. But to answer your question, it's like there are just times where frustration comes up. I don't feel like I'm doing enough. I don't feel like I'm honoring my talents. And that to me is a symptom of, okay, this is a season where I'm going to go out of the world into the wilderness, and I'm meant to do some spiritual healing. And the last thing I'd say about that is sometimes you can feel guilty because you're not producing. But what I say in the Everyday Hero Manifesto is, please let us start to discern and get to know when we're supposed to be spiritual, when we're supposed to be worldly productive. And if we're not worldly productive, but we're being spiritually productive, that's even more valuable.
Yeah. And I don't think crops are guilty right after they've been harvested and there's nothing to produce, for the next few months. You've got to take the time for the soil to recover. You've got to plant the seeds again, and then you got to water it and you got to grow it until it's time to harvest again. And I'm a big sports guy, and my whole, life has been based around sports growing up. And there was a time that you want to peak as an athlete going into the playoffs. You want to peak. You don't want to be burned out going into the playoffs. But then after the playoffs, there's a natural season of rest, recovery, reflection, where then you see, okay, what do I want to do for the next season? And I remember I was big into baseball my whole life until my senior year. I was like, I don't think I want to play baseball this year. I went and did track instead. And there was that rest, recovery, and reflection season after the season that allowed me to clear my mind and see, what do I want next with my life? What's my vision moving forward in this new chapter of my life? So I think that's important that you talked about that. I'm curious then, you mentioned a time of spiritual reflection, having these space and time. What would you say was the biggest wound that your ego had to face in the last 5 years? And maybe it was small compared to certain things you've had in the past, but just in the last 5 years. Again, people look at you as this extremely successful individual, leader, creator, author, with all the results you've created in your life and so many other people's lives. But in the last 5 years, what would you say?
Well, there've been a few things. I would say a number of years ago, maybe like 7 or 8 years ago, I was in a long-term relationship that I chose to walk away from. That was very difficult for many reasons. And I spent a lot of time journaling and praying and meditating and being out in nature and reflecting on, first of all, my part in the situation, but what I could learn from it, and then using the current situation to heal ancient wounds. I mean, that is how you can be an alchemist of sorts and turn tragedy into triumph, by using fear came up because of that situation. Sadness came up, but sadness could not come up if it had not been pre-existing. There's a wonderful idea: if it's hysterical, it's historical. So we know the size of the pre-existing. We know the size. Yeah. We know the size of the pre-existing wound by the size of the current overreaction. Yeah. So if we have the awareness and then choose to use the difficulty to remake us and transfigure us, then you triumph over adversity. So that was something that was really big for me. I'd say also...
What was the lesson from that experience?
Well, we'd have to spend 10 hours talking. I had like thousands of lessons. Yeah. If you don't go full in, you actually are creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. There was the lesson of being a better communicator on both parts. There was the lesson of picking. One thing I learned is I don't believe in opposites attract. For me, I've learned that compatibility...
Alignment attracts, yeah.
It's massive. Discompatibility can be very fun and very fiery.
In the first 6 months, and then you're like...
I watched this, I was reading this article about this very famous divorce lawyer, and she had a line in her interview, and it was powerful, Louis, and I think you might find it interesting. She was talking about relationships, and she was asked, you've seen so many relationships fall apart.
What'd she say?
She said, 10,000 dinners. And the interviewer said, what do you mean? She said, well, you've got to ask yourself, looks fade and all these other things fade. And you've got to look at that person that you want to be with and ask yourself, do you have the compatibility? And do you have the friendship? And do you have the great conversations required to enjoy 10,000 dinners with that person? So those would be some of the things I learned about that over the past number of years. Like any person who's running a business, I've had partners completely let me down who promised things that they didn't deliver. I've had people betray me and take advantage of me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's just part of life. One thing I do want to say is I work with a lot of billionaires, and many of the billionaires have one formula. They have lost 80% on their investments. I'm not giving financial advice, but they've lost 80 or 90%, but they invested in a few companies that caused them to become billionaires. And it's very easy when you make mistakes to think you're doing something wrong. And what I want to say to all your many, many millions of followers and watchers and listeners is Failure is the price of greatness. Failure is the highway to success. You've got to get in, like you've got to leave no stone unturned. You've got to develop this hardiness and resilience and anti-fragility so that you are willing to make mistakes. You won't always have the right teammates. You won't always have the right partners. You won't always make the right decisions. Lick your wounds and move on. It's far better. The discomfort of growth is always so much more value than the illusion of safety.
Ooh, yeah. Before the interview continues, if you feel like you're not living your most authentic life, not leaning into your purpose, and not living the life that your future self would be extremely proud of, I've written a new book called The Greatness Mindset, and I think you're gonna love this. Through powerful stories, science-backed strategies, and step-by-step guidance, The Greatness Mindset will help you overcome all the different challenges in your life to design the life of your dreams and then turn it into your reality. Make sure to click the link below in the description to get your copy today. Okay, let's get back to this video. The discomfort of growth is more valuable than the illusion of safety.
Right, because all those people you asked me, not judging but just reporting, living life saying, it sounds like a lot of work. Growing sounds like a lot of work. Building great relationships sounds like a lot of work. Emotional healing sounds like a lot of work. Setting your intentions and goals sounds like a lot of work. Being an excellent person sounds like a lot of work. But what's the alternative? You get to the last hour of your last day and you look back on your life and you think about all the potential and genius you've left on the table. You think about the experiences you didn't have, the food you didn't eat, the music you didn't listen to. And part of building, like in the season of productivity, part of building is not that you get FFA, fame, fortune, and applause. Part of building is you get to know your strengths and you get to know your talents. That's the reward, not the outer win.
Yes. If opposites don't attract, then what were you attracting in the past?
Very dangerous question, Lewis. No. Well, I was trying to say opposites don't attract for me.
Okay.
I know a lot of relationships where opposites work out perfectly. What was I attracting in the past? I was attracting, I assume you're talking about romantic partners, and I was attracting the partners perfectly designed to activate the emotional wounding that needed to be healed. Like they were my spiritual teachers. They were my soul friends. Like, I usually don't talk about this, but I do believe in karmic contracts. I believe I'm a very practical person, and if anyone's watching, it's fine. I'm just sharing my truth. But I believe there are karmic contracts. And I do believe, that's why you meet someone and you've never met them and you just go, how do you know my favorite food? And whoa, that's your favorite song too? And it's like you spend hours in the sunshine just going like, I found someone, and I believe I didn't plan to go here. I believe we have soulmates and twin flames. Okay. And I believe the soulmates in romantic relationships, they come to us to shatter us and open us and bring us incredible joy, but transformational exponential growth. Okay. And where would our lives be but for those people? Even if they knock us down for a long time. And then we have the twin flame, that's the person where, relationships are reason, season, lifetime. And I think the twin flame it's easy and it just flows. Like I don't do drama anymore. Yeah. And it just works. It's easier to behave yourself into a new way of thinking than think yourself into a new way of acting.
So act first.
Practice being spectacular long enough that unspectacularity has no ability to enter your orbit.